Lesbiana, and welcome to this episode of After the Fact, where we get to see things more clearly, where we get a better sense of the truth. So let's begin by dissecting the news. Earlier today, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno officially announced he's running for President of the Philippines next year. A trash collector growing up, Moreno has a compelling rags to riches backstory and a powerful campaign message of hope. If he, a poor boy who rose to become the mayor of the Philippine capital city and now vying for the country's highest elective post, could do it, nothing's impossible for the millions of poor Filipinos suffering, especially during this pandemic. But while Moreno, a veteran politician even at only 46 years old, may tick all the right boxes for a presidential candidate, he has the looks, the message, and the track record. Professor Julio Tianqui, he is the former dean of De La Salle College of Liberal Arts, is also the author of the study Clientelism and Party Politics in the Philippines. Good evening, Professor, and thank you for joining us again on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this declaration of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno that is running for president in 2022. Not exactly a surprise for a lot of people, but let's talk about Isko Moreno, the candidate. Is he someone who can be considered as ready for the presidency, given his experience in public office, especially since he hasn't completed his first term as Manila Mayor?
Well, there seems to be a pattern in the past three electoral cycles in terms of the presidential elections. No, as we have seen in the past three electoral cycles, there have been what we call black swan candidates that have emerged. No, these are candidates that were not really expected to throw their hat in the ring, and eventually they did. And eventually, despite the criticisms against them, despite the seemingly lack of the necessary requisites for running or mounting a national presidential campaign, they managed to capture the imagination of the public and the voters. And their message, particularly their narrative, resonated with the public, and that catapulted them into the presidency.
Is Isko Moreno someone who can be considered as a black swan candidate?
Apparently, from the looks of it, he might be the third black swan candidate in the three electoral cycles that we've had so far in the post-EDSA, post-Marcos political period. No? And why is that so? Because, as you have already mentioned, because of his compelling rags to riches story. No? But unlike the other declared candidates so far, Isko Moreno has the advantage of not only having a compelling rags to riches narrative, but he also, in a short period of time, has a proof of concept. No? That is, in the short period of time that he was mayor of the capital of the nation, Manila, he was able to deliver, and that distinguishes him from the other declared candidates so far.
Is geography a factor? The fact that he was able to showcase things that he could do as mayor of Manila in the Philippine capital city, basically the window to the Philippines. Is that an advantage?
Well, there is a saying, no, in politics, no, who governs Manila governs the Philippines, no, and of course there's a downside to it, the so-called Imperial Manila time, no, but that is the reality that Manila, being the center of political and economic power in the country, is really a showcase, no, of what a public official can or cannot do. Precisely.
Para sa Erap was rich.
Right.
Very rich. Pero he resonated, his message resonated with the people. But in the case of Isko Moreno, do you see authenticity? And definitely, not the authenticity. Talagang mahirap basurero.
Oh.
Pero what difference would it make in a presidential election campaign?
Well, in the past, no, we've had people who, it wasn't just Erap, no, or even Duterte who played the populist card. We've had losing presidential candidates as well, Manny Pacquiao and Jojo Binay. No? But in the case of Isko, no, what I see is that among all of these so-called populists in Philippine politics, no, even Ramon Magsaysay, no, if you will include Ramon Magsaysay as our very first populist reformist president, really did come from the poor. And the only other president we've had who genuinely came from the poor was the poor man from Lubao, Diosdado Macapagal. No? But other than Diosdado Macapagal, Isko and Manny Pacquiao are the only two presidential contenders thus far who can genuinely claim that they are from the poor.
Okay. Now,
the poor.
How can Isko Moreno, someone like Isko Moreno, distinguish himself from the other candidates? For example, in the case of Manny Pacquiao, diba, pareho mahirap. They have a similar backstory, although different routes.
Right. Yeah.
So, for example, in the case of Lenny Robredo, Macbuman, Sara Duterte, King Lacson.
Right. So, yeah, Manny Pacquiao really is, again, has a compelling populist backstory. Rags to riches talaga naman. And then, climbing all the way up, no, through boxing to become a world legend, no, in his field of boxing, no. So he, no doubt, no, authenticity, he has the heart for the poor, no, and that can be seen through his charities, no, to the poor. But unfortunately, aside from his personal achievements, no, again, I'd like to state that he doesn't have the proof of concept. Why? Because he was a legislator for a large part of his political career, no, and he did not perform well at that, no. So he's really an inspiration in the field of sports, but as an executive, no, if you ask some people, no, randomly, they would say that, yeah, I'm an idol ko yan sa boxing, pero sa pagka-presidente, iba yun. So, may mga ganun, no? Some people are, thinking along that line, no? Again, with Isko naman, kasi, because mayor siya, na may nagawa siya in 3 years, no? Na hindi nagawa ng ibang mayor in 2 terms, no? So, ako, Manileño ko, nakikita ko yun. So, yun naman ang bentahe niya.
Okay. There's also an interesting part of the speech by Isko Moreno earlier. Sabi niya, I'm neither a son nor a daughter of a president. Okay? Hindi niya makikita sa pera ang mukha ng aking walang perang mga ninuno. No avenues after them, kahit iskinita, waiting shed, walang pangalang dumago. So I have pulled myself out of the gutter with no daddy or box helping me along. Lone Ranger po ang apelyido ko sa gobyerno. This is true, no? But would this even make a difference? For example, ang una niyang inassail dyan yung political dynasties, the subject of your extensive studies. Pero is that even a factor among voters? Do they really care? For example, Sara Duterte, the daughter of the sitting president, does it even matter?
Well, apparently not, no? Because sanay na ang taong bayan sa mga dynasty. In fact, diba, 70% of the House is dominated by members of political clans, no? And the same can be said about local government units, no? By in 6 years' time, no, 80 to 85% of all elected offices in the country will be held by political clans and dynasties, no? And that makes that messaging by Mayor Isko Moreno very, very important and critical, because it is true that he is not a son of a political family or a tycoon or a taipan or not, di ba? So, yun yung punto niya, no? But the other point is, if ever Sara Duterte runs and succeeds her father, no? This is the first time that there is a direct succession, although it will go through an election, no? Yeah. But we still, even if they go through an election, it's still part of that phenomenon we call political dynasty. Diba? So, last point, Christian, if that happens, the Dutertes would be successful in putting into the national stage their kind of local dynastic politics.
Okay, we're taking a short break. After the fact, we'll be right back. Don't go away.